How's it going, everyone? Paul with Adaptable Survival. What I want to do in today's episode is start a little bit different of a series. As I'm sure you've seen from the title, I titled this as Debunking Survival Myths, but let's look at this more of a broader sense as debunking myths in the outdoor community. Stick with me as we get debunking. So, as I've been doing some research on my own, as I've been in my off season of teaching, I try to read up on some of the most current literature I can in terms of medical training, survival training, best practices when you're outdoors. So, it kind of spawned this idea for this debunking survival myths, outdoors myths kind of in general, and there's going to be some crossovers to a few other genres, but a lot of what I'm going to be talking about in this series will cross over into other areas and be applicable, in a widespread, wide variety of situations, I should say. So let's dive into myth number one: improvised tourniquets. So recently I have been reading a lot of studies, talking to some medical professionals on the efficacy of improvised tourniquets. Are they reliable options? Are they not reliable options? And based off my own research from some of the studies that I've read and some of the medical professionals that do this for a living, the general consensus is they're not a very reliable means of stopping a crucial bleeding incident. For me, as an outdoor educator, I want to pass along the most credible information I can possible based off of the most current information available. Now, there's always caveats with this. There may be X situation where an improvised tourniquet worked perfectly, and in this situation it didn't. But typically, and what I always say in my classes, if you've been to a class that I've taught at, when I talk about medical gear, is I'm never going to bank my life on improvisation when it comes to my life or someone else's life. Now, one of the common ones that I've seen that has been widely discussed in the outdoor community and other communities as well is using paracord as improvised tourniquet. Now, the issue with using a piece of paracord to try and stop bleeding, especially if you lacerate an artery, it doesn't have the width to really collapse an artery. Now, speaking with a couple of medical professionals that do medical training for a living, like for myself, I'm a pretty muscular dude and my legs are pretty muscular. So using a piece of paracord, I'm not going to get enough pressure to collapse that artery to stop that bleeding because of how muscular my leg is. And if you're hiking a lot, putting a lot of miles on with a pack on, typically you're going to have some pretty muscular legs. Even if, you're out of shape, whatever, as long as you're getting those miles in, you're going to have some muscle built up on your legs. So relying on a piece of paracord to collapse that artery is just not sound medicine. Now, don't construe this as me giving you medical advice. I'm basing this off of the research I've done in speaking with some medical professionals. I always tell people, when it comes to medical, get training from qualified people that have done this for a living. Make sure whoever you're going through for your medical training is credible in their background. Do they have experience in the field actually using what they're teaching? Because that's where you're going to get the best knowledge from someone who's actually done this out in the field to save lives, to prevent loss of life. Survival myth number two, and I'm sure you've heard of this at some point throughout your life, that you lose most of your body heat through your head. Now, where this originates from is from a study done in the 50s by the military to determine where heat loss occurs. And what you'll find in some of those older military manuals, they'll say you lose anywhere from like 40 to 50 or 40 to 45%. I also seen some places say 50%. Factually, in a research study done in 2008, that has been disproven. It's just not factual that you're losing almost half of your body heat through your head. In that 2008 study, they found you lose about 10% of your body heat through your head, and that coincides with the mass of your head in comparison to the rest of your body. It makes it up about 10%. Now, what's really occurring in that situation where you're losing body heat is it's actually your exposed skin. Now, think of this as you're all bundled up, but your face is open to the cold. Like today, my face is open to the cold, my hands are open to the cold, and they feel significantly colder than the rest of my body. That is because that exposed surface area is having heat drawn out of it. You know, just think of back to heat loss mechanics. So, you know, it's important to have layers and have a layered clothing system so you can mitigate that heat loss. But to say that you lose, 40, 50% of your body heat through your head just isn't actual fact. Survival myth number 3, changing your voicemail if you're lost. Now, about a year and a half ago, this post was going viral all over social media saying, if you're lost, change your voicemail to say what your name is, your current situation, if you're lost, hurt, etc., and what your intended actions are, where you're located, stuff like that. Now, face value, along with, using an improvised tourniquet and, losing 50% of your heat through your head, at face value, those sound like those would work. But the reality of it is, to call into your voicemail, which is controlled by your cell phone provider, number one, you're going to have cell phone service. So you're going to have signal of some degree to be able to call in the first place. Next, you're going to have to navigate the menu to get into your voicemail, change the voicemail itself, confirm that that change has taken place. And at that point, you're 4 or 5 steps deep into that process. When if you have cell phone service at all, call 911. Give them all that pertinent information of your current situation, what you intend to do, where you're located, all of that. Now, a lot of emergency services around the United States anyway, I'm not sure with other countries if this is going on, but I know a lot of places in the United States, emergency services, 911, are starting to have the capability of receiving text messages. So if you have a weak signal, send out a short, concise text message of all that pertinent information, send that to 911, because at least you have the possibility of that getting through. When you look at cell phone reception, it's much easier for a text to get through that service than it is to place a phone call. So if you find yourself in that situation, do what's most likely going to work. Don't bank on, all right, calling my voicemail, I'm going to change it, put all this information, when I could have just called 911 from the get-go. The other thing that you're going to want to do in that particular situation, have some maps of your local area. Have a compass available. Have a dedicated GPS unit, like some sort of Garmin, because now you have resources that you can accurately pick out where you're at on the map if you know that, and you're not draining your phone's battery. That's another thing to take in consideration with that situation is you want to shut off any app features, anything that's on your phone that's not critical to your survival in that situation. Now, whether that's background data collection from, notifications on Facebook and all this social media platforms, don't bank on your phone to be your sole GPS system. And I speak about that a lot in the classes I teach, is have a couple of different options for navigation to know where you are. So if you find yourself in that situation, you can preserve your battery and use the other tools available to you to get that reliable information out to rescuers. The other thing to consider, is with battery life is keeping your phone warm. So keep that as close to your body, keep that nice and warm so that battery doesn't drain from the elements. Trust me, my batteries filming out here in the cold get drained super quick. So with this series, my main goal with this, and I speak about this in another video, I'm not sure if it's going to come up before this one or after this one. I'm talking about survival kits and picking gear for those. But use any information that you find as a nugget of knowledge that gets you started, or that's a piece of a bigger puzzle. You know, a lot of times I find people, they see something on social media and then they take it as gospel. They don't do the background research to see, is this actually based in reality? Because if you've ever taken a class with me, as I've mentioned a couple times through this video, everything works in theory. Everything works written on a piece of paper, but does that actually translate over into real world application? Now, is some Joe Schmo telling you something about X, Y, and Z, but he never leaves his backyard? You know, how reliable is that information going to be? Does that person have any experience doing that particular thing? You know, take whatever they say and then seek out reliable resources or sources of information to back up whatever that person's saying. You know, even with myself, I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. So if I ever spit something out that's just not factual or not completely the truth, definitely let me know down in the comment sections down below. Also, let me know down in the comment section of this video what other myths you want me to explore, do research on, bring to this series. I think this will be a really cool series to kind of dive into different topics that are kind of thought of as factual but really aren't in reality. So I look forward to your recommendations down below. Also, do me a favor, hit like and subscribe. That helps the channel grow, helps get more eyes on the community we're building here, bring more people into our community so we can grow that knowledge base, so we can learn together and grow together. As always, this has been Paul with Adaptable Survival. Adapt your mind, your body, and your gear.